Hey guys, welcome to the Talking Shite podcast, the podcast where the guest chooses the topic. Each week we bring on a guest, talk about something they're interested in, and by doing so, hopefully get you guys interested in it as well. And today's guest, we're probably going to talk about something that a lot of people might not know about. I definitely didn't know about, so talk about it now. But our guest today is Ian Blakeman. He has a BA in illustration, which with honours, and he has practiced art for over 15 years. So I think it's fair to say Ian knows a bit about modern art. Just a bit. Yeah. So, like I said, modern art is something that has confused me. I know that. I've looked at some of it and gone, okay. But I'm guessing as an artist, you would maybe look at art a little bit differently, which will probably bring in some really good insight. Going to a bit about yourself, first of all, what was it that kind of got you into art? What was it that inspired you to start it?
Well, funnily enough, it was telling myself stories as a kid. So I was about 4 years old and told my family to come look at the picture I'd drawn. And they were like, but he hasn't got any paper. And I'd drawn in a massive picture on the wall and probably should have got shouted at or told off for messing up a freshly painted wall.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, they were like, pretty good for a 4-year-old. So they made me promise I would draw on paper from then on. And for years, I actually just used to draw for myself. I'd get a little story and start making marks on a piece of paper, and that was kind of it. It was just to tell myself stories, and then eventually started to show people artwork, and people were like, oh, that's good, and didn't really think about it as anything to do with a career. It was just something I did off to one side. But there was always just this storytelling thing. Like, it was easier for me to tell a story through a picture than it ever was through writing words. Like, I tried desperately to find out what my problem with the English language is, because no matter how hard I tried, I was always failing in English. Like, critically analyzing a piece of work, cool. The minute I had to write about it, D's and E's all round. I just spelling, grammar, none of it made any sense. So to be able to just draw a picture and go, this is what I mean, was, just natural. It just seemed to come natural. And I've always been a visual person as well. Like, I find if someone gives me a whole bunch of text, I struggle. But if someone gave me the same thing in like 5 images to instruct me in something, I would be able to follow that easier. So yeah, visual stimulus has just always worked better on helping my brain understand stuff. So yeah, so that was kind of it. Storytelling mostly.
Yeah. So I guess you read a lot of comic books as well then.
Well, this is the funny thing. When I was younger, I didn't really have access to comic books. So what I actually read a lot of was fairy tale books. Lots of illustrated.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a lot, like a large amount of text with a picture next to it. And I remember having this book that I never used to really read it very often, but it was this huge 1001 fairy tales, and it had some of the classic ones, but also just little ones about goblins or trolls or something, and they'd be like a paragraph long. But most pages had little illustrations on, or one big one, and I just become obsessed with this. That here's a bunch of words, and then this image describes that big bunch of words. And it was much later that I got into comics, especially that now absolutely love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, there's a few in DC that I've enjoyed, and have a whole bunch of the comics you'd kind of expect. Like, I've got a few Batman ones because I really wanted to learn about Batman, because I realized I'd watched every movie, being awestruck by Batman, and then went, wait, I've never read any of his comics. But I got into sort of comics without heroes. They were all sort of alternative ones. And then yeah, it became a really interesting sort of medium where it's like this is the perfect amount of word and visual input. So yeah, I have quite a collection now. There's a bookcase off to the side with all sorts in it, but less superhero ones and more most popular like cult one is Sandman by Neil Gaiman. What doesn't actually have a hero, doesn't it's kind of very much Shakespeare in that nothing really happens in it. It's a story about these massively powerful eternal creatures wittering away eternity, doing whatever they kind of fancy doing. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you yourself obviously work as an illustrator. I'll probably put some of your artwork below us going past. Look, it's Ian's artwork, guys. Look, artwork. Um,
Yay!
so, what is it kind of you usually doing? Like, is it like comic books you're doing, or is it usually like commissions you usually get for?
Oh, I've got into a very sort of something I never really expected. What is I kind of at the moment do a lot more work for small businesses. Now it's still I don't do like graphic design logos. It's
Mm,
still illustrations, but it's basically people want branding of some sort, but it isn't that standard kind of here's a photo or a very well clean cut. It's something silly and fun and strange.
mm-hmm,
And I could never really because I thought I'd never be interested in that kind of world, but actually just someone comes to you with a I've got this weird idea and I need you to do this. And I've drawn everything from lions as a promotional thing, and do that on a regular basis for one of my clients, to another regular client who's had me do everything from Greek gods to nerds to sci-fi to fantasy, and it's just always the same character, but just always dressed differently.
mm-hmm.
And then one of my clients said, "You're brilliant at bringing the world in my head to life." And that's what I realized where I'd spent so many years bringing my own world in my head to life. It's actually given me the ability to take other people's worlds, what they're trying to figure out, and put it into an image form. So that's the majority of my work these days. Like, it's still very like to look at it. You probably think that's just a silly comic character, but those characters are being used to promote all things from virtual assistants to um, copywriters and all sorts.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, I do have some commissions. I tend to be, I am a nerd. I love my D&D and other various tabletop games. And I recently finished one commission for a close friend of mine who basically wanted all of his hobbies condensed into one image so he could have it on his desktop and at work. And yeah, so that was good fun because I had to take everything from miniature gaming and RPG
Mm-hmm.
to photography, 3D printing, and everything, and just condense it all into this one image. And then made fun by the fact that he's in it as well, but dressed as essentially a Jedi because he's doing the lightsaber training. So yeah, great weird fun. And yeah, a lot of tabletop characters, people who want their rogue or their barbarian turned into an actual image to do some to have at the table when they're playing. So yeah, that's I'm kind of it's one of those jack of all trades type thing because at the same time I've been getting into Twitch emojis. What they're fun and playful things, and people are like, oh, can you do this? And I thought, okay, yeah, well, let's give it a try. And that's completely that one's new to me, that one. So yeah, other than that, I do a lot of puns. I do draw a lot of play on words, puns, and strange random things that just pop into my head, and it's almost like I can't until it's out on paper and drawn. It just plays in my head until I can get it out. I work in a kitchen as part of a day job, and I tend to do a lot of food related puns because there's that much talk about food all day long. Something at some point someone will say just turns into a random joke in my head, and then when I get home, it gets turned into an image. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of what I
that's
do.
awesome. Like I'm also kind of the same line that D&D is one of my bloodlines. Uh, you know, gaming up. I see behind you as well, kind of gaming and RPG style of
Yeah,
pop
yeah.
vinyls and stuff. You can't see mine. Mine's are all the way over there on my shelf
Well,
behind my
these
green screen.
these all I've just recently got into TikTok and I was trying to
Hmm.
make it so the background looked more interesting. So this all just came from downstairs in my living room, but that's where all my board games are, and there's just a stack of all
Yeah.
sorts. So D&D the most famous, but there's all sorts that I play, and that all goes into inspiring artwork as well. Especially one thing I find most inspiring is people. Like people say great and strange stuff, and um I suppose one of the dumbest things that happened recently was we were playing a game of D&D and a a monster appeared, and I can't remember the actual name, but it's like this a queen fungus thing. So it's this quite intimidating character, quite powerful. Basically, if we looked up the stats, we would have been ruined if we decided to fight her. The only thing is the DM loves to say stuff to try and mess with our heads. So he was like, "So this lady fungus appears to you," and obviously we all just we just started laughing.
Yeah.
No one could get past it. So I drew this weird mushroom female character and just called it Lady Fungus. And so that, those nights sometimes inspire the strangest and weirdest things.
Yeah. I just went and googled it. The Zuchtmoi. The Zuchtmoi,
Well,
the demon queen of fungi.
let's have a little look. Like
Let's see what she can
no.
do.
I literally searched it and somehow got Naruto. Oh, Zuko. That's why Zuko. I was like, what's that? Well, I guess like a party of monks or something. It is probably her demon queen of fungus. That sounds like quite a title. And what are you the queen of? Oh, many things.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
AC23. That's tasty.
Yeah, we are level 4. So to put that in perspective, I think if I was to max my dice, I'd still only be hitting for 23. I mean, I'm the cleric. I'm a tanking cleric, but so I'm not the go in and smash it type. But I'm usually at the front to have a swing at something. So usually, if something hits me and it hurts, everyone's like, "We need to stop fighting and maybe negotiate."
I'm a DM for a party right now that again makes some interesting decisions. One of the running jokes in our campaigns is that we have the bag of beans, because they have, everyone's got like the Tower Cocra deck or the deck of many things.
Yes.
No, ours is the bag of beans, and this was a homebrew thing I found. I'll read it out to you because it is hilarious. It's a homebrew thing I found where basically inside a heavy cloth bag are 3d4 dry beans. The bag weighs half a pound, plus a quarter pound for each bean it contains. They're quite big beans. If you throw a bean, it explodes in a 10-foot radius. Each creature in the area needs to make like saves and everything, which is hilarious, and it ignites things. If you take, I've expanded the rule to if you take a bean and plant it, or if you eat one of these things can happen. So, for example, 5d4 toadstools sprout. If a creature eats a toadstool, they roll any dice they want. On an odd roll, the eater must succeed on a saving throw or take 5d6 poison damage and become poisoned for an hour. Or, if they get an even, they gain hit points equal to that. There's one that a geyser erupts water, beer, berry juice, tea, vinegar, wine, or oil in a 30 foot into the air. A treant sprouts. Oh, this was an amazing one. An animated immobile stone statue of the player's likeness rises, and it makes verbal threats against them. If you leave it and others come near, it describes you in the most heinous of villains and directs newcomers to find and attack you. If you're on the same plane of existence as a statue, it knows where you are, and the statue becomes animate after 24 hours. And oh,
I love it.
It was so funny as what my player plants it, and I raise up, it looks exactly like you, and it goes, "You motherfucker!" Starts trying to like swing its arms at him, like you get him. And no, one of my players ate one, and they rolled a 99 because on a D100. A pyramid with a 60-foot square base bursts upwards. Inside is a sarcophagus containing a mummy lord. The pyramid is treated as a mummy lord's lair, and its sarcophagus contains treasure of the DM's choice. They ate the bean. So I basically froze time, and they were in Avernus, so a devil appeared, and they made a deal with the devil to stop them from dying.
Oh God.
Oh, but some of them are hilarious. Like,
No, we in this the game I'm in now. Things are going on, but I remember one game where the DM found all of these weird and wonderful items, and I don't know if I never searched for it because I was one of those that the less I know as the player, the more I can not know as my character. But basically, there was it was one of the metallic dragons. I can't remember which one now, but he was like an enchanter, and he created magical items and threw them into the world. But they were all weird and wonderful and broken items. So there was this cup that basically, if you tap the bottom, it was there. But the minute you poured liquid into it, it just fell through the bottom. But that's all it did. It didn't help you in any way. It was just really frustrating and annoying. So that was great to hand dwarfs. You'd hand to one and be like, yeah, pour some in, and you'd be like, ah. So you can make friends easier if you used it right. There was a spell brace, yeah, that you could put spells into, and was it our druid got it and was like, oh, I'm gonna store loads of spell slots in it, and then it was like, how do I get them out? And the DM was like, you can't. You've just wasted all those spell slots. It's like, wait, you can put them in, but you can't take them out. But the only thing is, it was charged magically, so we basically threw it into something and blasted it and watched it explode with like 5 levels of spell in it, essentially. But there was all these weird and wonderful things, but they all had basically a map marker to go and find the dragon. And in the end, we basically were, true heroes. We're trying to save the region, but we got so obsessed with these treasures, we were like, sod it, let's go find us a bronze dragon or whatever it was. Sadly, the campaign never went, it ended before we got to go and do that. But yeah, some of the stuff that he put in the game, although my favorite thing I had, it wasn't one of those, but it was a ring. And this I've heard loads of people, but it was a ring that you got to change a letter in a spell as a reaction. And that was great fun. But I was a monk. I didn't have any spells, so I would do it and just to try and save us or make something less damaging, or even try and make something of ours even more damaging. But I then, because I wasn't a spellcaster, I didn't look at spells. One night while we were waiting to set up, I was just reading the kind of basic spell list of every character, and I realized that all the low level spells you could mess with and make them extremely dangerous by changing one letter. But then I looked at all like the level 9 spells, and if you change one letter, it made them absolutely useless.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was to react to someone using the wish spell, because you could change the W for F.
I saw a post about that, and I said, "Oh, I'd change it to P." So pish. All of a sudden, urine splits from the hands.
So yeah, D&D is great for that, and I definitely again, the storytelling. I've been a DM myself. It is great fun. Although the most fun I ever had is with a core system called Savage Worlds. I don't know if you've heard it. They did like a steampunk western sort of thing, and it had nuclear power and magic. And never played that. I've just taken the core rules because it's great fun, and then essentially skinned it. And the one I ran first was Borderlands, and it's set after everything that happens on Pandora, and it's on another world where there's a vault. And again, the vault hunters are going, but instead of it being like a game where it's like you're the healer and you're the tank and you're the shooter, it was like you get to be whatever you want. Literally pick your profession. And the best one was one of the female characters. She was called Bertha, but she looked like the Incredible Hulk. She was just muscle on muscle. And basically, she was a bin woman. That was her job. And she'd just been drawn into vault hunting as a sort of adventuring thing. But on her sheet, it just said bin woman. And so, yeah, and that was great fun because of it being Borderlands. You could be as silly and weird as you wanted. Yeah. And one of the last things that I'd done in it is I'd introduced a character who'd wandered out of the desert and ended up in this city they lived in. And one of the guys had become a doctor. He'd updated the hospital, but he was like a really creepy guy. He was always grinning in this horrible, weird way. But he wants to do a medical check on him. I was like, no, he's in a coma and you're definitely not getting him out. And he was like, no, yeah, but I still want to try. It's like, well, yeah, if you want to roll for it. And true to nature, he scores multiple successes. And if it was any other thing, basically this person would just be healed. You would have made them younger or something with the rolls he got. So I looked him dead in the eye and was like, congratulations, you figured out his coma is due to plot-related incident. And he won't come out of it until later. And he just... If he'd been drinking, there would have been a spit take because he just lost it. We had to stop for a good 5 minutes as he just broke down in tears because to hear that it was a plot-related coma. And yeah, it's great fun.
That's so Borderlands though. Like
it is, yeah. That was the whole point of the game. It was to take that kind of the sometimes stuffy element of D&D where there is that kind of, Tolkien kind of Lord of the Rings feel where, the elves are elves and the dwarves are dwarves, and then go, nah, we're just going to have this game that's absolutely weird and absolutely wonderful. And yeah, again, another dumb thing they done was, in true nature, I gave them a map, and as players do, they were like, we want to go off the map. And I was like, by all means, go. And they're heading out into the desert, and I was like, your car stops. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, it stopped. And they all get out and they're looking at the cars like, is there anything wrong? And then one of them tries to walk to the front of the car and go, you can't get past. You just stop. You hit a barrier. And he's like, what? What's there? And they're all sort of banging on this thing. So I was like, guess it's just an invisible wall. They obviously haven't programmed past that part. And again, they were just like, we hate you. And I was like, yeah, I know. Get in the car and go the other way. What they did and drove off. So
I would have done it like they come off that end and then come up on this end.
That would have been dangerous because the one thing I'd done is I'd gave them the idea of the freedom of choice, but it was all an illusion because basically there was the good area, the medium area, the hard area, and the end boss area. If they'd done that, they would have done the Mario thing, level 1 to the end level.
Yeah.
And it would not have been pretty. Oh, it wouldn't have been pretty. Would have been funny, but it wouldn't have been pretty.
Yeah. We were speaking about D&D as well, so you've obviously got like the player's handbook and everything. What's your kind of opinion on the artwork in the books?
Do you know what? Sometimes it can be very hit and miss. I remember when I got into 4th edition, what was the one I properly got into, you would just have moments of looking through the book and go, what were they thinking when they signed off on this piece? But the 5th edition one's very, the style doesn't break throughout. And I've never really looked into the artists in it.
Yeah.
If they're all the same, by the same artist, or if it's several. But no, just fantastic pieces of work. Everything from obviously, the front cover is just... It just sums it up. Massive monster and this one person diving in to do it. But then just little bits, like even just skeletons, like in the back of the player's handbook.
Yeah.
Just sort of go, here's some little monsters that you can have as your companions through various different spells. So I actually think the work has gotten even better as the editions have gone along. I mean, you look at some of the original stuff and you look at it and think, what was that? But then you think of when it was started, what was 1970, and printers weren't at that level, because that's a whole big thing when it comes to illustration. Like the printers couldn't handle that sort of art, and you didn't really have the digital means you have now to produce all sorts of fantastic stuff like that. So yeah, all the black and white drawings, very simple, very plain monsters, and just the evolution of monsters, because it's like, wait, we can do anything now. We can make this thing just a flaming mess of energy, and we can draw that, and that can be illustrated quite easy now. So yeah, it's all of the guides are pretty good. Like although there is one thing, I haven't got a monsters manual because I've only been playing 5th edition. I haven't DM'd. Go to page 206, I believe.
I was about to say this. Generally, I was really, do you have a monster? Yeah. So you've heard the song. You know what? I have 2.6. I have a monsters manual.
See, like I only learned this literally last night. This was something that came up on TikTok. I've just brought the picture up as well. Image.
I can't find my monsters manual.
No.
But it's all the way. I'm resorting my room, and it's like behind boxes. But I guess you heard the rhyme of no one hits like Gaston, no one crits like Gaston, no one's on page 206 like Gaston.
Last night, it literally was on a TikTok, and I was like, "What?"
Oh, it's hilarious! It's him.
It is very much. I don't know if it's been done on purpose. I think it has, because that's the sort of thing artists will do. They're like,
oh yeah,
how can we get away with this? This thing. I mean, not just artists, everyone. Like the funny story of the Animaniacs. They used to push the joke boundary as far as they could, and the censors would be like, you can't say that, you can't say that.
mm-hmm.
So they got this personal joke where every time they pushed the boundaries, Yakko would go, good night, folks, tip your waiters. And it's obviously meant as this joke's a bit raunchy. But the other thing is that the animators would go back and watch it, and the story writers, and see which bad jokes made it through. The ones they were like, this joke won't make it in, the censors will take this out. And then they'd hear Yakko say that, and they'd be like, oh my God, they didn't take that out. So yeah, like I think when people can do that, where they can throw something in and go, oh, I wonder if anyone will notice this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it always makes me laugh, because possibly as well, are they questioning, like, is the editor, like, are they just flicking through going, yeah, that picture fits in, that's fine, yeah, that's fine, and not really paying attention? So sometimes some of it is to sort of see what they can, is anyone actually paying attention to it properly?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a gorgeous piece of artwork. But yeah, I saw it last night on TikTok, and I was just like, I want to own a Monsters manual just for this picture now.
Oh, it's if I own so many books just because of just for the fact of owning them. Like, I'm a bit of a collector at heart, where if I get into a hobby, I want everything. Like God, when I got into Warhammer, I had a case full of the little paints, just so I know that if I needed that color, I have it.
So I when it comes to it, yeah, there is definitely, I do hoard a bit when it comes to certain things. My collection of books, there are many an art book on there that I've probably picked up once and flicked through once, but I've got it because the artist I love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of, I want to do something to appreciate this person, so I'll buy their thing. And art books are great as well, just for every now and again flicking through, especially like I get a few tutorial ones from the artists I like, because one big thing about art is you're always practicing. Every drawing is a practice for the next one. And there was a brilliant quote from Bob Ross that was like, where he basically goes, I hope that you always fail a bit in your paintings. And the idea is, if you paint the perfect picture, if you make that perfect image, that's it. It will never get better than that moment. So just give up. Give up there. You've painted the perfect image. Just stop. And that would crush every artist. They don't want to stop. So he sort of wished a little bit of something that you could always get better at.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I get tutorial books still. I'm like, God, I love how this artist does it, but how the hell do they do it? And I'll go and have a look. And there's a lot of how-to books that are quite, this is how to draw Spider-Man in this pose, and doesn't really help. But I remember finding this dragon book once where it was like, we're going to teach you how to draw dragons, but let's go over some of the basics. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is perspective. This is that. But no, it was a digital artist. So they're like, right, here's color theory. Here's brush theory. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. You want to be looking at this. You want to, and I was like, reading it like, and I was like, I don't think I've ever read a tutorial book so thoroughly.
Yeah.
And then when it got to here's how to draw dragons, again, it wasn't just like, here's how to draw our dragon. It was like, here's the theory behind how you come up with your own concept. And then here's how to put it all together. So yeah, so I'm always looking for things like that. But there are definitely books on my shelf as well where I've got it and gone, great, I'll read that one day.
Oh, that is also a collector's nightmare. I have campaigns I've not even touched yet. Like I bought the big £100 box of Curse of Strahd just because I wanted it. I've got no intention to play Curse of Strahd anytime soon. I just have it.
a few of the groups I'm in, I think I've seen a few people say that where they're like, I've bought it, I never want to play it. It's like, because I've never, that's the funny thing, I've never actually played the D&D campaigns. Like any of my friends who've ever run it have run their own game. Any I've ever run, I've always created basically a world just based on the rule set. So it's got this interesting thing that when anyone talks about like those campaigny things, it's like, I don't think I've ever actually played one. I think the only thing I ever played was that it's technically a home brewed one that's become famous is someone put us in that dungeon that's horrific. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's just everything is just set out to kill you. It's not in any way, and
Is it
every
Dungeon of the Mad Mage?
I think it might be, yeah. But it was like it was unofficial, and then basically everyone plays it because it's so horrific to play. And even just getting in the dungeon can kill you. There are literally campaigns of it where people have walked through the door and died instantly. Because there's like 3 ways to get in, and one of them is just instant death if you all walk in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I've ever played any of the campaign things, but yeah, I see all the artwork and the images and the monsters and everything that comes from it, and I'm like, I kind of want to own the images and maybe know about it. But I don't think I ever really want to play this.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's so many different things that can like feed your kind of curiosities in D&D. Like the one we're playing right now is Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus. So that's more like it goes through like it's almost like a crime, like for the first 5 levels, like a crime thing, and then you go down to El Torel, which is a straight horror movie for 2 levels, and then they're in Avernus, which is Mad Max. Like I've got them on a war machine, and the first war machine fight I went, cool, play Pendulum Voodoo Child. Boo, 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 boo. So yeah, there's that. But even with D&D going into illustration, like you said, like it was actually some of the illustrations that got me into D&D, going like that's cool as hell. And then of course we're talking about modern art, and there's that side of literal modern art that because of the technology, art has gotten better. It's like your graphics tablets and everything and all that. But of course, there's that side of modern art where maybe a few people don't understand what's going on. And I'm kind of half on that shelf. There's some parts I'm like, okay, I kind of understand what they're getting at. And there's other things that what the fuck's this?
Well, that is the strange thing about art. I actually was talking to my friend about this. Like I said, I'm going to be on this podcast, and this is what we're talking about. And I said to her that I would describe it that in technicality, all kind of art, most art anyway, is either pointless or useless. Because if you just it's a pretty thing to look at, but if you took it away, it wouldn't change the words in a D&D book. In fact, it would make a D&D book cheaper because there would be less to put on the pages.
Yeah.
You would just have reams and reams of numbers, but it wouldn't look interesting. And that artwork makes it really, really pretty. But there's this kind of thing that, like, if you go to like the Tate Modern and you look at all of this modern art, and even some classical art and things, you'll kind of go, I don't really get this. What is this trying to do or say or something? But in a flip side, in the same way, if you have someone who's not into fantasy art who goes, well, this isn't real, this is an interpretation of reality, this is a fake reality. Why is that why would I like that? So because of that, there's the varying different views. And it is that thing that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You go into art and you sort of see what you want to see. Like, there's a philosopher. I always joke, I hate this philosopher. Never met them, don't really completely understand the philosophy. But the way they would describe to me is that their philosophy was you can't trust anything unless it's first hand. So even if a news reporter tells you that there is a war in a different country, how do you know for sure that there is a war? Is it a skirmish that someone's blowing out of proportion? And an interesting view on this is that I have family in New Zealand, went over there about 3 years ago, and they were selling Jeremy Corbyn as this socialist terrorist who's evil and was taking the Labour Party in this dark thing. And I was like, he has an allotment. What? What? But the news was selling him as this really evil tyrant.
Hi, Rupert Murdoch. Hi.
So it's that strange thing that, like, unless it's first-hand experience, how do you know what it is? Well, the problem with art is technically art isn't first-hand experience. The artist has gone, I'm having this experience. This is what it's come out as. That's the first-hand experience. The second hand is you going in, looking at it and going, how does this make me feel? And then, like anything, I studied art for technically 5 years, say 6, but once you get into art, you sort of study it in one way or another, whether you're in education or not. And I loved art history because it actually opened my eyes up to, like, the movement of art and why things happened. So, for instance, everyone was painting photorealistically. Everyone was doing these gorgeous, gorgeous sort of, and people can look at that and go, "Oh, I know what that is. That's a person, and that's the person who lives in the manor down the lane or something." And even in that, there is still other stories going on. So there's a lot of hidden messages in those portraits. Like, often if you have a painting of a couple, if there's a picture of a dog in it, it usually means they were in a happy relationship because dogs were a symbol of loyalty. So even though that's a straightforward painting of here's a man and a woman and a dog, that seems straightforward. But actually, the painter was suggesting that as far as everyone knew, that was a loyal relationship. However, if they painted a cat in it anywhere, it was a symbol of disloyalty. And basically, it was a symbol that one of them was not faithful. And the artist would just put it in as do you have any pets or anything? Oh, have you always wanted a cat? Because cats are this and that. And they would paint in a cat. And or they'd hide it somewhere. And so there's all this language that artists had to hide messages in the paintings. Or, like a lot of artists, to begin with, a great example is William Turner. He used to do very beautiful and expressionistic paintings. But what he was paid for was his portraiture work, because that's where the money was. But if you go look at his portraits, there's always a cloud in the background filled with light, and you don't know if it's lightning or sunlight trying to break through. So what happens next is you get photography. And it's like, look, I can do a portrait. Click. Well, gunpowder and artists were like, well, I guess we need to experiment and go somewhere. And then as you travel down, other influences come in. There's a movement called futurism, where basically they started to draw fast cars and there was lots of straight lines. And it was controversial because it was painting movement. There's a portrait called Nude Descending the Stairs. And in no way does it look like a nude. It's very abstract and strange. But it was controversial because instead of it being someone just posed, I'll just lay against the sofa and you paint me, the artist got the person to walk up and down stairs and they just captured moments of the movement. So that came along and they were like, science is great. Look, science is wonderful. It will stop all wars. And then World War I happened. And basically it started another movement where Dadaism came along, what was anti-art. They were like, if this is what art is, if this is what society is, we're not going to do it. We're going to go over here and do this. And you could say a very modern art gallery in, I think it was Paris. It was a Dada gallery where they had pottery and paintings and everything around. And as you walked in, you were handed an axe, a pickaxe or a hammer, and you were asked to smash the art as you went around. And it was the idea that they were anti-artists. But
I want to go there.
In the true nature, though, of it, it destroyed itself because it was anti-art, but it became popular. And because it became popular, it became art. So all the anti-artists were like, no, this isn't what we wanted, and all quit and walked away from it. So yeah, art travels. So now we've sort of hit the modern art age. And what is modern art now is basically, it's those ideas, but without it having to be the paintings, because that's being done. Expressionism, Impressionism, abstract painting, sculpture. It's like, well, what do we do next? So you were saying about like Jackson Pollock, and because I was trying to work out his style, and I ended up having to, and it's called abstract expressionism.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay. And to me, like abstraction, I've never really got. I remember when we did our foundation and we were doing rotations, like, here's abstraction. This is how to paint abstract, and I'm trying to do, it, and it's like, no, 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 you're being too clinical about it. You've got to be more abstract. And I was like, I don't know how. My brain doesn't do this.
Hmm.
So I could never get my head around it. And expressionism can be any number of things because that's like I'm expressing myself. Me drawing, a banana pun is me expressing myself. So you
Hmm.
could say that I'm not an illustrator, I'm an expressive illustrator. So that's more just if the person kind of feels that's what they're doing.
Hmm.
So um, Jackson Pollock's a good one because he did the whole pour painting style. And it's all about kind of like mapping out your own mind. So he's just pouring and creating things, and he's watching those shapes appear, and he's throwing things where he feels they should be
Hmm.
to create abstract and strange images, but they're something to him. But that's that thing again where that's the first hand. That image is something to him that's come from him in that moment. When a bunch of people then go look at it, they have to then feel what they feel about it.
Hmm.
So you then get into you have to stand there, and if you look at it and go, I don't have any feelings about it, that's not actually wrong. It's art. If you
Hmm.
don't like it, it's kind of like food. If you don't like something, you wouldn't really eat it unless it's good for you, and then you still have to. But
Hmm.
that's a whole other thing. Art, you do have this moment where like for me, it's Matisse. Matisse is impressionistic expressionist. It gets so complicated with all the names.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing this Matisse piece. Now, realistically, it's a very bad image. Like the character in it is very poorly drawn. There's no depth perception. All the things that you think of technically you'd need to make a good picture
Hmm.
aren't there. But I saw this picture and I actually just stopped and sat in front of it because the mixture of the colors, the shapes, the lines, I just liked it. I just fell in love with this image and I just sat and was like, I want to know more about this artist because whatever they're doing
Hmm.
has turned something on in my brain and gone, you like this. You like whatever the shades, whatever the shapes, whatever it is, you like what they're doing. So yeah, I went off. I studied a little bit of Matisse and found out a bit more about him. And um, Matisse became famous a bit later because he got crippling arthritis and ended up doing like um, collages with blue torn up shapes. And
Yeah.
basically, there's that throws in another question of who is the artist because someone else had to do the art for him, and he just sort of put it together.
Hmm.
And you do get into, well, isn't the person making it the artist, or is it the person having the idea? And then that opens up a whole debate then of what's
Hmm.
happening. So yeah, so it's kind of if you go and see, like you were saying about, like you saw a piece that was just three cubes, was it? Three black cubes,
Yeah,
and I have,
it just appeared on my timeline one day. It was just a red, uh like someone had painted the canvas red, and then they'd painted three black squares, and then they'd taken, oh no, sorry, no, that was that, and then next to it was a piece where someone had just taken a Stanley knife and cut three lines into a canvas, and I was like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'd done that back in primary two, but it is it's like that kind of stuff. But I'm always like, I'm not anywhere qualified to say if this is art or not. You know.
honest, actually, everyone is that. It's that I always think art should be open to everyone. Like we can all create, and unless you're trying to make money from it,
Hmm.
draw a stick man, enjoy painting something badly, do whatever it is you enjoy to express a little bit of creativity. um when it comes to things like that, it's usually critics and people with like stupid amounts of degrees, because I've gone in and had the exact same feeling about a lot of modern art. I went to the Tate once and I like I absolutely embarrassed my now ex-girlfriend. It wasn't ex because of this, but basically we went to the Tate. We're in this massive room. It's in London. It's not hugely busy, but it's busy.
Mm.
And there was essentially a piece of junk in the middle. No, it was in the corner of the room. Huge piece of junk. And I go up to it, and without censoring myself and without making myself quieter, in quite a big room, so it echoed quite a lot, I just went, "What is this rubbish?" And she was like, "Shh." And I was like, "No, I won't shush. What is this?" And I read the thing, and it was a found object. They'd found a shape, and they'd liked it so much that so it actually was junk. It was a piece of scrap metal they liked the shape of, put it into a gallery, and gave it reason. Like, "Oh, I love the shape and this, that, and the other." And then the critics are going, "Oh, it's very reminiscent of all that." And you sat there going, "What? How? What? What?" But to that person, that was an important moment, or was a beautiful object. In the same way that a D&D book is like this beautiful object to us. It's filled with all this wonderful art and all these creatures that we can then bring to life in our game. We have this whole world that someone else might look at. Like my brother. My brother's very much football, sports, and he's got lots of other creative things. He's a chef. Like he's a proper chef. Like so he comes up with all these wonderful ideas when it comes to that. But all of that was very confusing to him when we were younger together because all that nerdy stuff made no sense to him.
Mm.
So for him to have looked at the book back then, he probably just would like, "What's all this rubbish?" The same way someone walking into a gallery will look at a torn up canvas and go, "I could do that, couldn't I?" Like, the only thing is the price difference. That's
Yeah.
usually because Jackson Pollock. It's called Jackson Pollock #5, and it sold for $140 million.
Mm.
And essentially, it's splashes of paint on a canvas.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like you said, what was it? Something expressionism?
Yes, abstract expressionism.
Yeah. I have a friend who is they go through like therapy, and they said one day they were told, go buy a canvas, buy paint, and throw paint at the canvas as a form of therapy, like art therapy, and it helps him. He's always been like, I don't know if I'm ever going to sell it. Be funny one day if it's sold, but again, but I think it's because I think maybe because like films and TV shows haven't really helped modern art in that kind of sense. Like because I'm a filmmaker myself, and you see I remember back in Disney Channel, they'd put the really pompous snobs, going, "Yes, I can sense his anger. I sense the dark side in him. Yes, Anakin, good." That.
Yeah. Because I always forget his name. I think I sent you this in a message. But he paints canvases blue, or he did paint canvases blue.
Mm.
And he became so famous for it, the blue got named after him because he just used the same blue every time. But he did a great experiment with the critics. So he invited a bunch of critics to come back and see him paint a canvas blue. And these were people from like The Guardian and The Times and actual art critics of publications. But the funny one is there was someone from the Daily Mail's art critique there. So they're all gathered into a room.
Hi, Rupert Murdoch. Hi.
I feel that's a running theme today. So yes, he's got this canvas on the floor, but strangely enough, he's got a huge flat tray. So imagine a rolling paint tray, but like back-sized in width. And there are all these critics are standing there like, "Oh, we're going to watch this art. Oh, it's going to be wonderful." And they're all ready to write about it. Suddenly, a woman comes out completely naked. He then proceeds to dip her in the paint. She climbs onto the canvas and he just swings her legs, basically, and just paints the canvas blue with pen. What he then had is a photographer taking pictures of the critics. And the funny thing is that the people from like the Times and the Guardian and these very, as you say, the Disney art people are all kind of like, oh yeah, I was not expecting. And the guy from the Daily Mail was like, "Hey, boobs," and they've all got very different. So you've got all the people who are supposedly the quintessential, who probably look at nudes as part of their job. There is a
Yeah.
huge thing in art. And then you've got the guy from the Daily Mail who's a little bit, I don't want to say it this way, but a bit more common, a bit more of the people, a bit more down to earth, who is just laughing at the experience of like, okay, lol, you got us there, nice one, that's a bit funny. Where the others are taken back by it because they don't know how to deal with the situation. So, and that was the art. The painting the canvas blue is something he'd done every day. He could easily video that and have just sent it to them, and it probably would have been different because it would have been attached with, oh, and I do use a nude woman. But the actual thing was capturing that moment of this canvas is what this face came from. So again, that's the other part of that expression and the meaning behind something. You might not always see the meaning because the canvas was kind of the extra, the actual moment, that moment of capturing how they reacted in that moment was the actual part of it. So that can be a big thing as well. Like, because everything's open to interpretation, you do get sort of that moment of like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? Sometimes an artist will paint something because they just want to paint something. Like it's that thing of when you're taught how to critically analyze a book, and it's like, what does the blue door mean? Was it their feeling of depression and it's a locked door and they're not letting people in, or is it because they just happened to write there's a blue door in the room, and that's it? It didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It was just they happened.
It's so weird because, yeah, I'm on the other side of that because I'm a filmmaker and obviously I'm thinking a lot about the mise en scène of a scene. And I'm one of these filmmakers that everything I try to put in a scene is there for a reason. And like, oh, I could go on days about Stanley Kubrick's mise en scène and French New Wave mise en scène and all that. But like it's weird being on the other side of that. Like I know one day I might make a film and someone might go, oh, he's put that door is white because that person is pure, that person is that. I'm like, no, actually, it was just the set and the person who owned it wouldn't let us paint the door. Like, so it had to be white. Like,
yeah, it is. It's like I think all artists suffer from this at some point. They will put their heart and soul into something, but someone will see either something else in the image or they'll highlight something that wasn't important. You just drew that as part of it. And I think every artist, filmmakers, musicians, everyone goes through that moment of, or the other thing of creating something as part of a series that aims towards this last image, but everybody likes the thing that was on the first page that took you 10 seconds to do. And you're like, what? Why did you pick up on that? I put all of what, but that's just because that what they've seen and what they apply to it. And I lived with movie students, so they did teach me a little bit about like reading into various different things in movies and watching out for certain stuff. And critical analysis is the same throughout. It's just when it's your subject, it's obviously easier to go in and look and say, well, this is technically good, or this is why they might have done this. Because a lot of things when it comes to expressionism, impressionism, I can understand the whys. It doesn't always mean that I like the piece. I can look at it at something and go, well, I understand why they've done that or how they've done it, or maybe where they were as a person when they done that thing. But it doesn't mean that I'll enjoy it. It just means I understand it a bit more. But the one thing I accept is I had to go to university to do that. I had to learn how to do that. So someone who hasn't had that, who walks in, to have that reaction of, this is a canvas that someone's took a Stanley knife to. Surely this is an accident. This is an art. It's actually quite perfect response to a piece of art. If that's what it makes you feel, that's the feeling behind it for you. It might not be why. Like there's the act of serendipity is comes into art a lot. I know you can have like a canvas what's damaged and someone turns it into art, or something happens to a piece of art as you're making it and it suddenly becomes it, and an artist will go, well, that's serendipity. It's happened now. It's part of the art. And some artists rely on that sort of happy accident that creates something beautiful. And I have to admit, like, there's times where, I mean, a great story I have is when I was in university, I had this fantastic tutor called Andrew, and he was a very traditionalist. He was a printmaker, and he made beautiful work. We saw his work one day. I was like, this is gorgeous. But he used classic print techniques, so nothing digital, all hand printed, wonderful, wonderful pieces. And he jokingly said, he was like, if a digital package could one day create what I do on my print studio, then I'd give up my print studio and just have a MacBook. And everyone laughed about it and was like, yeah, that'll never happen. And then one day we were trying to clean up a piece of art. So I'd drawn something with a fine liner. This is before I'd really got into using a graphics tablet. Scanned it in, and we were just trying to figure out how to clean it up so it looked nicer. And as we were doing it, we messed around one of the systems, and it made it look like a screen printed item. It had accidents in it where it picked up dirt on the paper and it highlighted them. And then where the pen wasn't light enough, it had faded it out. So it looked like a random print. And because we just had this whole, oh, I'd give up traditional art and become a digital artist if I could do this. He kind of looks at me through the corner of his eye. I kind of look at him and we're just like, should we undo that so you can carry on being a traditional artist? And he goes, yeah, I'll just press Control Z. I was like, I'll remember what you've done for me later, but we'll pretend that never happened. And so, yeah, that happy accident brought about like a way of making a stylized image. That's like, well, I could use this to maybe make something look screen printed for a project that, you know, makes someone maybe wants a poster in something. Because again, working with the movie students, we often would go and be extras or help out on student films. And there was one where I was asked, could I help out and create a poster? And I ended up actually screen printing it. But to get that feel, went off and screen printed it rather than trying to do it digitally. So even knowing I could have done it on computer to just make it accurate for what they were trying to do, went off and actually screen printed it. But you know, other people can do that. You just do it digitally these days. So the same with like poured art and expressionism and all these. You probably could do something digitally to make it look the same, but it would ask, does it still have that feeling? Because if you don't like something, you can undo it, or you can move something, or you can change it, and it stops being about the feeling you had when you were making it and becomes more about, oh well, you know, this is more technical. It'll sell better if I just change the color slightly, or people are more interested if you have this shape pattern in it, so I'll just replicate that pattern. So when you get to, say, again, Jackson Pollock, where you've got this random thing, once that paint's there, he can't, well, he could scrape it off, but probably leave some sort of mark, some strangeness, some weirdness. And again, back to that serendipity, the happy accident. So that's why modern art still holds up like that critique level.
Yeah.
So it still has that, oh, yeah, well, yeah. Because I have to admit, sometimes I'm working digitally and think, how many other people have done this before? Edited this, and how many times do I give up on something I've done freehand to create something that might sell better or works better, because I have that choice more freely available to me on a computer.
Yeah, there's probably like a very good definition of everything. You just talk for me. That was great.
Yeah, sorry, I did say about this where I just
Oh, yeah.
I will talk and talk.
I like I said, I hope somebody. I just hope there's somebody listening to this going, "What the fuck?" It's weird because like I did study art in high school. I was into that kind of creative side and stuff, but it was, you know, I just loved, I just liked drawing, and I used to draw some, you know, weird stuff. I used to, you know, take like the D&D stuff and like, cool, can I draw a dragon, please? You know, and I was kind of into the screen printing, you know, just when you said that, I was a lot into, I don't know, can't remember the style, but you know, it's like the two-tone, and it's kind of like they just cut out shapes in paper, but when you put it on another color, it actually reveals like a...
Yeah, so there's all the different styles, but yes, that is the general screen printing thing. Yeah.
I was always into really simple movie posters as well. I remember for one of my assignments, I remade the Shaun of the Dead poster, and I done it like kind of like just taking bits of paper, cutting them, and then sticking them, and then printing it through. And I've that was it was easy. It was actually just a hand holding a cricket bat with a bit of blood in it. Just that kind of style. I always really liked that. But I remember there was a physics teacher who used to cover an art class once a week because the art teacher had something. But I had him once, and he said the reason I like art so much is because it reveals something about the artist scientifically. And his favorite artist was Monet.
Yeah.
And he said the reason that I'm so obsessed with Monet, and he says because of all these colors. Now, people like I've got Monet, the Japanese bridge, up here, and
I think, yeah, another one.
he said like somebody found that location, and they were like, yeah, there's the bridge, but it's a white bridge, it's not a blue bridge, and there's all these different colors, and people were like, might and he went, I think he had a mutation, and we're like, what? And he went, yeah, I think he could see an ultraviolet light. And it was like, oh, and he went, and look at all of his other his other paintings, and he just literally flicked through them. He went, there's colours there that you would not see. He said he's painted sunflower, like you paint leaves blue. It could be a color deficiency in his eyes. It could be because of the color cones in his eyes. Or he went, I think he could see an ultraviolet light, and he said the same with Van Gogh with Starry Night. He said, I think Van Gogh could see things that we couldn't.
Yeah, because I think it was, I'm sure it was yeah, so one of Monet's one as well, and there's actually a picture of it. He went to the same spot for quite some time, and basically painted I think it's pronounced Ruin Cathedral, and I think he'd done it about 10 or 12 times. 12 times there, and it's all different times of day and moods he were in, and it creates all different colors. But the one thing you do notice is he does pick up on certain things. So yeah, that it's an interesting interpretation, because everyone sees differently. Like my eyesight's starting to go. These glasses are very new, like they're 2 weeks old. So yeah, there could have possibly been something there where he did see things differently, and he was trying to capture that. And yeah, like obviously, it's starting to change these days because of the knowledge of mental health. But like with Van Gogh, there was a lot of depression in his life, and it was like we're talking clinical depression. And there is this noted thing where they say, people who suffer with various mental illnesses paint in circles like he did. But in essence, he painted all of these things as a way of like obviously expressing himself, but probably like you saying with your friend who'd done the art therapy, it was a way of, so it can happen this way where it's a way of not focusing on the thing that is causing you pain. And it's a great way to express yourself, art, but it's also a great way to be so hyper focused on something you kind of forget that for a moment. And there's a sort of saying thing like, oh, Van Gogh's art is so tragic and beautiful and all this, and it's like, well, yeah, but nowadays that wouldn't be romanticized like he is. It would be like, we need to help this person. They're struggling a lot. So the other thing, I struggle a bit with Van Gogh because it's that kind of famous person syndrome where it's like, oh, I'm meeting someone famous. In college, we all went to Paris on an art trip, and we went around all the galleries. And then there's this gorgeous one. I forget the name of it, but it's a old steam station. So the building itself, without any art in, is gorgeous. It's just this huge building. But what was beautiful is because it was an open space, rather than you go to stuffy room to stuffy room, every room connects to every room. So you're just walking from impressionism to expressionism to graphic design to illustration, and it's wonderful. But I just remember this one moment of walking from one room and couldn't get into the next one. I'm like, what the hell is this a specialist exhibition? Took me a while to get in, and I realized it was the Van Gogh collection that they had in the gallery. And people were there going, "Oh, look, a Van Gogh," and then walking away. And it was loads and loads of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there are paintings better, worse, different in all these different rooms that are going ignored, and all these people are here just for Van Gogh.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that feeds into these Jackson Pollocks, and they are the new stars of the sort of art scene. So when you get to a certain level of fame, there's a certain point where it's someone's buying your art probably because they like it. There's a danger where you get to a point where someone wants to buy it so they have a piece of your art. There's also a really sad thing where basically, if you own a piece of artwork, you have, and this is really kind of like cynical of me, but it's sadly true. If you own a piece of artwork that's quite expensive, it's also tax deductible. Like, so you think that Jackson Pollock that sold for 140 million, that's worth 140 million and is only going to grow, but you don't pay tax on that. But if you ever need 140 million dollars, you sell the painting, and suddenly you have that money. So some art is highly expensive because someone will pay that because then they don't actually have that money sat in a bank and therefore doesn't have taxes taken off it. So that's it's a very cynical view of it. But
it is, yeah.
There's a certain point as well where it's like, someone's bought this just because they've got too much money.
Well, going on to that, I remember I mentioned Banksy because he was one of the I mentioned him because he was one of the first artists that I was kind of exposed to. You know, I'm 23 years old, so growing up, Banksy was kind of a name that got mentioned. You know, these stuff. You know, and I've always had a slight obsession with graffiti. I think graffiti can be beautiful sometimes. I think some of the skill people have with a spray can is insane. That's enough. I love the kind of the modernized concept of how people are making art. Like you know, the people that take like wool and nails and they like tie the wool around the nails and they make a portrait out of all the lines they connect.
Yes.
That is unreal. There's people that make portraits out of Rubik's cubes. There's people that paint pictures in Minecraft. Like it's insane.
I saw a great one where it's a long time ago, but it was someone who did portraits in toast, where they literally
I've seen that, yeah.
And I was sat there going, this is insane. Like,
yeah. I was sitting there going, right, I can't even toast to how I want it. Like, and you can do it to such a shade of like brown that you can make portraits out of it. That's
dedication for one thing.
Who made your toaster?
Yeah, I want that toaster.
That would be an amazing advert for a toaster. Just like, buy this toaster. So accurate you can paint with it.
I mean, I think I would buy it on that basis myself.
Yeah. And but yeah, there's that kind of thing. And the reason to bring up Banksy is obviously quite recently, a few years ago, one of his portraits sold. And then after it sold, it shredded. So that's maybe like, that could have been a commentary of what you just said, or the fact of, cool, you've just bought my artwork and now you've got nothing.
And you know, you can always look at it in different ways. He's sort of seen as an activist. Mm-hmm. So it's fighting against that. Money's in the bank, and then haha, I've destroyed it. Yeah, it's a great interpretation as well of that. Like, you've bought the art, you can say that you bought it, but you don't get to keep it. Mm-hmm. So it's how much do you want to be able to say that you're the person who done that? That's what you're paying for. You're literally paying to be like, I'm the idiot who bought. I mean, I'm the person who bought the.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, like a lot of his art obviously is unpaid work. It is just him, because to begin with, because that was a big thing with him, Bristol, because obviously that's where he started and grew from there. His artwork was everywhere in Bristol, and obviously the council got a bit stuck because it became so popular and famous. It drew people in, but they were agreeing to allow graffitiing happening, and it's sort of like, what do we do? So they had to declare it art, mm-hmm. Otherwise it was vandalism, and they'd have to get rid of it. And then the irony came along where one of his pieces of art in Bristol got vandalized. Someone painted over it. and so they cleaned it, and then they had to start protecting it, and it's suddenly like this literally is the problem. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's done all this graffiti for free, but it's become such a selling point for your town, your city, that actually now you're spending money to keep it safe, where it
Yeah.
is just vandalism. It is someone coming along and defacing a property.
Yeah.
I believe now Banksy is paid to go and do these sorts of things. And there's loads of other stuff. I went to his exhibition in Bristol, or her exhibition in Bristol. I shouldn't really say,
Mm-hmm.
because no one really knows.
Honestly, I'm of the mindset that I don't believe Banksy is one person.
Yeah, that I mean, I actually love all the conspiracy theories. Like I swear, at one point someone was saying it was Matt Damon for some reason.
I've
I
heard
just love
it's
all
one of the
that.
members of Pendulum. I've heard it's Matt Damon. Um, yeah, there's loads of stuff.
But it is that's lovely as well. It's like an urban legend. But also the idea that it is just many people rather than
Mm-hmm.
just one. But yeah, there was an exhibition of all the work, and one part of it was famous people were asked did they want a portrait by Banksy for, and it was something like £5,000. It was a silly amount, but the paintings were not like it was like a child had done them.
Yeah.
And again, that was another thing of like, oh, you can say now that there's a painting being done of you by Banksy. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean it was good, but you get to say that it was done. And some of the stuff in there is just like gets you to look at things differently. Especially there's a whole bit on animal cruelty, and I think that the one that's stuck in my brain is an animatronic Tweety Pie, but before Tweety Pie got feathers, was like a little skin bird, had like no feathers.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was made to look like a real chicken, but with Tweety Pie's head, and it was all sort of hyper realized to make it look like a real thing, trapped in this cage, just swinging backwards and forwards. And it, we laugh and joke about like Warner Brother cartoons, but in the end, it was getting you to look at something that you just laugh and joke about in a completely different way. The
Mm-hmm.
same as Dismal Land, like when
Yeah.
that appeared.
I'm literally googling that right now. Like, are you just like looking at my computer or something?
Well, it's I'm just, I went back and had a look at Banksy because I wanted to go to see Dismal Land and never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just like this fantastic concept that people were going to see it, even though it was literally being, this is a horrible thing. This is terrible,
Mm-hmm.
awful place. And people are like, yeah, we want to come and see it.
Yeah, like one of the things I do have a friend that studies art, and I mentioned Banksy. And he go, "Oh, just shut up about Banksy." And I'm like, "What?" He went, "Literally, Banksy has failed his mission." And I'm like, "What?" Banksy went out there to shove a middle finger at the world, and in return became famous and probably rakes in a shit ton of money now. Like, and he was like, "Yeah, Banksy's," and I think one of the funniest. I've just saw this. It's like, Banksy's Dismal Land has been repurposed for refugees, and I'm like, they could not have put them in a more, I want to say, ironic place.
This is very true. I hadn't heard that. That's quite terrifying in
I've
some
literally got
way.
an image right here of a bunch of tents being erected as like a refugee camp, and in the background of all these tents is that kind of broken like Magic Kingdom castle, and
That's really horrific because I believe that part of Dismal, yeah, actually a picture's just come up of it as well. Part of Dismal Land is there's one of those boat steering things you get in most fairgrounds, and it's refugee
well, it's a bunch
boats.
of refugee boats. Yeah,
God.
it's so weird as well because one of the reasons that like Banksy kind of popped up again in my head is that there was a Banksy in Edinburgh. When I'm from, it popped up on Bread Street, and it was just a little girl with a phone, and it's like she was taking pictures of a rock, and within days it was vandalized. And part of it actually, it reminded me at first, obviously I was like, people are vandalizing a Banksy, why are they doing this, and then it kind of clicked. Well, that's part of it. It's a like there's a thing with like graffiti artists is that if someone does this big spread on a wall, you don't paint over it unless artist says, because they go, cool, time to rip it down. And you cover up the whole piece, to be respectful and stuff. And if you want to find a place, you only paint over the bits that have been heavily tagged and stuff. And within days, you had people write in, Kelly rocks, put in a speech bubble saying, please be kind to each other. And then somebody has now completely spray painted a black box over it and wrote, trite, boring, dull, badly painted, 0 out of 10. And
But yeah,
it kind of speaks like, it's one of those, was it they say that the evolving art, that the art is still going on. Like recently, the other thing in the news is that robot that was doomed to clean up its own mess.
oh yeah.
And how at the start it was apparently really, it was like eager to do it, all that, and now it moves so slow. And
It had other things it could do as well, and then would have to clean up the oil that kept it going. And then, but because the leak became so bad, it stopped doing all the other things because it could dance. I believe it would, the arm would dance as well and things. But yeah, it got to the point where all it could do was clean up its own oil, like, so it was going to perish.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is that thing about, especially with anti-artists, that a movement comes along and then it becomes so popular it somehow ruins itself. Like, and so many go through it. Like, one name that people know about, like when it comes to surrealism, is Dali. Like everyone sort of sees Dali's work or hears about Dali, and usually when it comes to surrealism, stuff of his like is recognized. Like the melting clock is the But the thing I find funny about that is the idea of surrealism is it's real made weird. Like it's not real. Yet you can now buy clocks that are melted clocks that hang on a shelf.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, that's kind of, you've taken the thing that was surreal and you've made it real. So it's now a real object. It's a working real object. But the other interesting thing about Dali that until I actually studied, I didn't know, is he got told off. Because the whole point of surrealism, it was constantly meant to change and evolve. So an artist was meant to paint something, then the next thing had to change. Well, Dali was being paid so much money, he just painted what he could and already did. And all of the people who come up with his art manifesto, because most groups have a manifesto that says, this is how we do the thing. They're like, you need to come back. We need to reteach you because you're doing surrealism wrong. And it was, he looked at his pile of money in his lovely house, and he looked at a bunch of artists who were sort of okay known, but not really famous and weren't rich, and was like, I think I'll stick with the pile of money in the big house. Thanks.
Yeah.
And so everyone looking from the outside in is like, a great surrealist, where the people on the inside were like, it wasn't. It was terrible. And that, again, it feeds into this whole critic and how people interpret it, because on the outside you can look at something and go, that's beautiful, that's ugly, that's exceptional, that's plain. And then someone who's got more knowledge will look at it and be able to go, well, that's completely the opposite of what you're saying because of these reasons. And sometimes, like, knowing too much is a bad thing, because you can't just go in and look at a painting and go, I like that, and that's it. You just go up to someone and go, that's pretty, I like that, the colors are nice. Sometimes the more knowledge you have when you walk in, instead of just appreciating what someone's created, you kind of go up and go, well, I can see the lines and the thing and and the technique and this, and you're like, shut up, brain. I just kind of want to look at a painting today and enjoy it. So yeah, I find myself struggling in galleries a lot now, like just because of that knowledge, because I won't be able to switch it off. I'll walk in and see something. Even classic paintings, I'll go in and I'll start to look for things to analyze them, unfortunately. So yeah, it is best to just go in and either immediately be like, that's shit, that is, or it's good, that, I like that, and then just exist in that moment of just enjoying or not enjoying the piece of art.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some conversation today.
D&D and art.
Oh, honestly, like this has been a really, really interesting topic, and a lot more in depth. I knew it was going to be in depth, but a lot more in depth than I was expecting, and all that. You know what? We'll go for one more kind of little topic, because this was something that I've seen pop up as well. Is that a lot of people talk, obviously, like today's kind of like cancel culture and everything going up and everything, and people are having this argument of separating the art from the artist. And of course, as things come out, we find out more and more. We pray that nothing comes out about Bob Ross, you know, uh, all that. So I'm going to go right into the deep end here. And probably one of the most famous, really bad artists, as in bad man, was Mr. Hitler.
Yep.
So, and people kind of calling like his art, it's weird because his art still sells for quite a lot of money. And you were talking as well about, the whole people buying art because, it can be an investment in the whole fame aspect. So in terms of someone like that's artwork, what would kind of be your, if you saw it hanging in a gallery, what do you think would be your?
Well, here's the thing. We actually did this experiment in university.
Oh, really?
And basically, in our art history class, they put up 4 images of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just these drawn, painted images of dogs. And the tutor was like, right, have a look at these, and then we'll just talk about what you think of them. So, we analyzed them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a step back from it. It was like, well, this is obviously expressionism. This one's a bit more to life. And, we just took them as they were. He was like, right, does your interpretation change when I do this? And he pushed a button, and the worst painted one, the one that none of us quite liked, was someone famous. Now, I can't remember the other 3 artists. One of them was a no-name person. They were just literally something he'd found on the internet.
Yeah.
And it was probably the best we all enjoyed because it looked the most real. That was what we attached to. I think the most of the people in there were like animation, illustration, and graphic design. So because of that, the more sort of real it was, the more we kind of were able to look at it and enjoy it because it looked like the thing we wanted to. But the mid-range one, what was this pencil drawing of a dog, was by Hitler. And none of us had been like, oh, that drawing's evil. That drawing is definitely evil. I can sense the evil coming through. There's something evil about. No, we just like, it's an all right picture of a dog. And then suddenly the names flash up and you've just got Adolf Hitler and you're like,
Oh dear.
I said these things about that thing. So there is a certain degree of if you can step back, you can analyze something for what it is. And I think like if you take like the opposite of that, of like if you didn't know and you were handed a painting that was by Jackson Pollock, this drip painting, and was said, oh, how much would you pay for that? And someone was go, oh, well, it's in this style, I'll give you that. And then someone goes, actually, that's a Jackson Pollock. Here's the man himself. He'll tell you he painted it. You'd probably suddenly go, well, if it's that, then I'll put more money on it. And in the same reverse, that like if there's a good piece of art and then you find out it's by Adolf Hitler, then what do you apply to it? Like what does that then change about you? Like, because I wouldn't want to pay money for that because it would feel like I am donating to something that is evil. But the weird thing is that Hitler's dead. So who is being paid for that? If you're buying it from someone who idolized Hitler rather than like the artwork, then maybe your money is going to the wrong person. So I would say in that sort of case, because I mean, you've used Hitler as this level of evil.
Yeah, I just went for the biggest one I could think.
Yeah, that's easy. But here's one. You mentioned when we were talking about Pablo Picasso. So kind of, if you're like a household name of art, and Picasso, fantastically weird guy. Would have loved to just hang out with him for a day.
Yeah.
Because of the strange things. He once had a guy come to do an interview in his house, and he was like, right, I'll fix you a drink. You just have a look around. And he saw this wall of books, and he was like, oh, is this he's like, yeah, this is a collection of art books. And he's like, oh, thinking it was other artists. And he's like, yeah, they're all about me. And the guy was like, what? And he's like, yeah. So he started pulling out, and they're all history books about the man who owns them.
Yeah.
And he pulled one out. He's like, this is my favorite one. And it was Japanese. He's like, "Can you read what it says?" He's like, "No, no, no, but look at the binding. Isn't it beautiful?" Like, he just seemed like an odd guy.
Mm-hmm.
However, a big part of his work was painting nude women. There's a lot of female and sexual themes in his artwork. He was a horrible misogynist, supposedly. I can't say for,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there, don't know the
Yeah.
whole story, but was truly treated women as lower than men. Like, he had this horrible view of women. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff was very much like he had like a wife and mistresses. And if I remember Picasso's story, he also divorced one of his wives to go to marry a younger woman. Like, that was the level. So again, you sort of weigh that up against the stuff that he did do, because he was very much he fought fascists. And there's also, it's, something that people say he had a certain power because he was quite famous as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And he painted a famous piece called I think it's pronounced Guernica, where this is before First World War had started. You had the Spanish Civil War, and basically they asked the Nazis to help them bomb a city and it was horrible. It was
Yeah.
atrocities of war. And he painted it, and these Nazis pushed into his art studio and was like, "Did you do this?" Pointing at this painting of Guernica, and he just pointed at them and went, "No, you did." Like, he did not give two shits. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Bring it," but they wouldn't touch him because he was loved in America, and there was a
Yeah.
true fear that if they arrested him, America would come over and be like,
Mm-hmm.
"What's all this about then?" So it was this weird time that an artist had power that
Mm-hmm.
he could have swayed America into the war earlier when it began, but he ended up going, "Actually, it's getting a bit dodgy now," and he left for the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
So where you had a man who fought against fascism and would literally tell Gestapo troopers to do one,
Mm-hmm.
you also had the other side of him. That was this horrible person towards women who treated them as less
Yeah.
than real.
I guess it's kind of the same as well because uh, I guess in the film and sci-fi and all that, and even D&D and aspect, we have H.P. Lovecraft, who without his mind we would not have some of the terrors we have, like Cthulhu and the Yungus and all that kind of stuff. But he
Interesting
was,
name, cat.
yeah, yeah, had a very interesting name for his cat, and not only that, like apparently he was so anti-Semitic and so xenophobic that even people in the 1920s were like, "Here, that's a bit much." Like,
So yeah, it is. It can be very difficult to separate art from the artist,
mm-hmm,
and I actually think of the mind that I do agree that if you're going to pay money to that person directly,
yeah,
and it turns out that there's something wrong. I mean, obviously we've got what's her face with Harry Potter.
yeah,
She's you know nailed her flag really, really to the wrong post.
mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why, because obviously when Harry Potter come out, like, she seemed to be very like
Yeah,
embracing all these different
yeah. It was like,
people.
oh,
And then,
Dumbledore's gay, by the way. Like,
yeah, but it just turns out it was just all this thing to just sell the book, and then
mm-hmm,
and she has, again, this is through hearsay, so I can't say I've seen pieces about it, but I've never seen the direct quote where she basically said, "Yeah, any money, if you pay me money, you agree with my views."
mm-hmm.
And it's at that point where it's like, well, no, I don't want to. I don't want to buy any of your artwork in any way, shape, or form, even if you haven't done it, even if it's just endorsed, like it's a Harry Potter pen. So
Mm-hmm.
it's got nothing to do with the written things, but has the words Harry Potter on. She will get money for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I struggled because I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. It's not like I didn't read the books. I tried to watch the movies, but I had a friend on call essentially, and I was going, "Wait, what are they talking about?" Well, if you'd read the books, I was like, "I'm not
Oh
going to
yeah,
read the
yeah.
books." But the beautiful movies, great actors, and I'm a big fan of Daniel Radcliffe because of them. Like some of the
Mm-hmm.
movies he's done now, but they all went back to do that special edition return.
Yeah.
And even though they were like, "Oh, she's not going to be in it. The only time she'll be in it is if we're using like stock footage." It's like, yeah, but that's her IP, so she
She's
will have
gonna get
had to be
money.
paid for that. So no, I'm not going to part with my money. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but then if you again using Hitler, it's who that money goes to then, because it's not going to him anymore.
Yeah.
If it is, then all those conspiracy theorists were right, and he's living in the North Pole or on the moon.
The one I heard that he was living in Ireland, and he was a fisherman. That's the one I heard. Yeah, and I'm just imagining, like, okay, so let's imagine Hitler going, oh, I need to get out of here. Right, okay, I'm probably one of the most famous men in the world right now. I'm Times Magazine's Man of the Year 1937. Right, how? You know what? I'll just shave this off. Nobody's gonna know who I am. And I could just imagine him like flying over, and it goes, "Yes, Mister O Hitler." It's a very, very awkward name. It's a very awkward time for my family.
Oh, I do want to hit. I've got a few friends who do speak German. I want them to like try and put an Irish accent on that while speaking German.
And of course, the classic. He's in Argentina.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think when it comes to that, it's like who's getting the money for his art? Is it funding fascist ideals?
Yeah,
because there's some people out there who don't have, like, again, from uni, when we went into our second and third years, we got to pick whichever art history we wanted. And they were like, you're illustrators, there's an illustrator art history. We're like, yeah, but we've done art history in illustration for like 3 years already with college and everything. I kind of want to try something new. And I did one called Sound and Technology in Art. And so basically we kind of looked at all of this in depth. This was part of it. This is this sort of like who are you paying for the art? And one of the weird things is we did look at like fascism in it, and how we were listening to this song play, and again it was the same sort of experiment. We're like listening to it, it was in German, and no one knew what it was saying. And then at the end of it, it's like, right, before anyone comments, I'm now going to tell you that was actually anti-Semitic. The group is fascist, and they release horrifically racist work. That's what you've just listened to a clip of. And so people are commenting, and then he's like, none of you have said it yet, but there must be someone in here who's going to say it. And then this one guy at the back went, oh, for God's sakes. Okay, puts his hand up, and everyone looks, and he goes, yes. And he goes, yeah, it was really good. I actually really enjoyed the song. Like, it was the sound. I didn't know what they were saying, but the sound was really nice. And so that was that thing again, that you could be listening to something that you enjoy without realizing, oh, actually, this is horrible lyrics. I mean, I actually say it about pop music, because pop music in the 90s, all these boy bands singing all these songs about love and fall and relationships and stuff. And you had all these women who were just like, oh my God, I love them, I want to marry them. But if you go back and listen to some of the lyrics, it's basically like, hey, I cheated on you, I left you, I came back, I cheated on you again. But will you take me back? And there's these women going, I'll take you back anytime.
I think perfect example is the Pina Colada song.
Yes,
Literally, that song is about a guy who gets bored of his marriage, wants to have an affair, starts basically having an affair with his pen pal person, decide to meet up in person, and it's his wife.
And then that's great for some reason.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I love you. No.
It's essentially you're bored shitless of the marriage. Good. Let's go be bored shitless in a different way. Oh, really? It's just an example of how communication is always important within a relationship.
Yeah. To anyone listening to this, please go and talk to your partner.
Yes. I completely endorse communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But it all feeds into that. Like, what are you listening to? Are you listening to that band because they're popular, or are you listening because you like the lyrics? Like, when it comes to my taste in music, there are several songs that I listen to because I just like the sound. I don't know much about the band. I don't know much about the lyrics. I could be humming along to someone who's very racist or sexist or whatever, but I don't know. And then the same with pop lyrics. It's like, if some other band was doing this and saying, oh, I'm cheating on you massively, will you take me back? And I was like, and if your partner said that to you, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah.
and it's just because it's a popular band. So, and it all comes back to that idea of the interpretation of the person. What
Yeah.
what what is it you apply? What do you bring to this? What is it? What foreknowledge did you know before walking into the room?
Yeah. Like I feel that because um I'm I'm quite a big fan of kind of like that kind of Latin rap, the Mexican. I think it's called Chicano rap. I don't have a clue what they're talking about, but I will sit there going "A la le puta la gasolina,"
Yeah,
and
yeah. There's an artist I follow and on TikTok. Nah, name has escaped me. They do art, but the thing they do on TikTok is he dresses in a demon mask
mm,
and has conversations with himself, and there's other guys dressed in and they just there's this whole thing that basically somehow he's ended. I don't know the whole story, but somehow he's ended up with these demons from hell, just hanging out and living with them.
mhm.
And but they released their own version of that song because he basically does death metal growling. But
I think
and
it
again,
is he called Alex Terrible?
I think it is,
He
yeah.
is in a band that I love called Slaughter to Prevail. And see, when I see that, like, put it this way, I said I'm doing the D&D campaign, Descent into Avernus. Um, one of the songs that he performed is what has inspired me to do the voice of Baphomet. And literally, it is just extremely low Russian growls, like "Oh gosh, they'll still be opened," and I'm like, that man is Satan. But no, I know exactly what you're talking about. The masks are really cool as well.
So yeah, it is. It is absolutely like fantastic. But I admit I tap along to that whenever that song comes on. I sat there going, yeah, whatever, gasolina. Yeah, I know the bit. And it's like this is great, but yeah, what are they saying?
Oh yeah, he could be singing
Yeah,
about he could be saying "sling the bitch in the car, sling the bitch in the car," like all that. Oh, and going back to what you're saying, we're talking about how I get we're not really talking like how you're saying art provokes feelings and stuff. And I remember we mentioned Hitler's artwork and how people be like, oh, you recoil. This reminds me of a story, and I'm perfectly okay telling this because this was me as a child compared to me now. But when you're 9, 10 years old, you're a boy, you're trying to be funny, and you're trying to be edgy. I was one of the kids that drew swastikas. I will full on admit that. And it's probably because I didn't know what it was. And I remember I got caught doing it. They told my parents. Obviously, my mum was like, "That's terrible. Don't ever do that." Da, da, da. And I was like, "Yep, okay." And my dad was the one that went, "Right, okay. There's clearly an issue here of you don't know what that is." So he took me on a day out, which is weird considering, right? Anyway, the reason I'm taking you here is I'm taking you to the Museum of War, which is in Edinburgh Castle. So he took me there, and this only reminds me because I went back there very recently with my girlfriend because she had never been, and I saw it again. What they have on display is a piece of a Messerschmitt, and it is the swastika that was on the Messerschmitt. It's covered in bullet holes, it's scratched, and it's been cut out, put on display, right? And I remember he brung me in there, and he put me in front of it and went, "That's what you're drawing, son." And you feel it. You just seeing the fact that an actual swastika is, you'd be like, "Oh shit!" And it's easy, seeing them people painting on walls. Oh, that's disgusting. No, and until you actually are in the presence of one, that you realize you're like, "Oh fuck!" And since then, never drawn a swastika.
it
Um,
is like that. If you think about it, it's a horrible way to say it, but it is a piece of horrific marketing. Like that image
mhm.
is how they sold themselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is very true that to stand in the presence of some of this stuff
Mhm.
is inspiring and terrifying in absolute equal measures. I've been to a few museums myself where I've just took a moment and looked at something and gone, that was a human, that was a real person. And I've been told, stories from all sorts of things that you you forget that sometimes when you're playing your computer game or you're watching a movie, that actually that was a real and very terrifying thing. And like I didn't get as a kid. My nan was terrible for like we'd use like one tin of tomatoes and a piece of meat out of the freezer, and she was like, right, we've got to go to the shops and fill that up.
Mhm.
I was like, why? And it was not until much later that I realized she was still in the whole rationing situation. Like, you had limited amounts of everything. So when they could finally buy food, they were filling the house with food. And in her head, that could happen again. That
Mhm.
could have happened at any moment. Rationing could have come back in, and everyone had limited time. And I mean, you could say it sort of happened with COVID, like, people being told you're only allowed this amount and that amount of stuff.
Yeah,
Not to the level of
people
obviously the
steal like
wars.
literally taking cases of bog roll. I'm like, that I never understood that. You see pictures of people who have rooms full of bog roll, and you're like, have you never wiped your arse before? Like,
It is. It was a very when because I understood a lot of the stuff. I went in and saw all the baking goods gone, so no
yeah,
flour and things. It's like, well, I get that. People are worried they won't get hold of bread, so they're learning how to make bread. Cool, and other things that you think, yeah, that's limited. But then when I got to the toilet, I was like, what? Why did you think this was a thing?
like
When did this become a
yeah,
thing?
it's weird. I was kind of I don't want to say smart about it. No, because smart's the wrong word. It's more I understood what was going on to an extent, and I understood. Okay, the shops are still going to be open, which means we're still going to be able to buy stuff, and I kind of half benefited from it because everyone was going, to get the frozen stuff and all that. I was getting cuts of prime meat for dirt cheap. I was like, I have got a ribeye steak here for the price I'd pay for a skirt. Like it's it's fantastic. But it's because I understood the shop's going to be open. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't get any bog roll. Only need a packet. You know, and people putting limitations on. Like I said, my mum was bad for it. When I found that she'd done this, I actually had a bit of a go at her, and I feel bad for doing it now. But I understand why she done it. At the same time, I'm like, come on, is it? We have a cupboard that's literally now full of like ibuprofen, paracetamol, uh, like painkillers, vitamin tablets, and all that. Because she went and she hoarded them, and I'm like, they're still going to be there. We're still working through them. I've just finished the amount of pasta we bought. Like,
Yeah, so that's the thing, like that it was a terrifying time, and that symbol just was what stood behind it. I mean,
mhm.
taking it back to art, I always forget there was twins who, see if I can find their name. Um oh no, it's come up with actual um see if it no. I can't find them. There were these two artists, two twins, and they did all sorts of art to provoke people. So they
Mhm.
always did things to provoke, and they wanted they wanted sort of people to get angry, upset, but to engage with the art on that level. And something they did was they took these prints, the sort of famous artist who again name escapes me. I think it's just
Mhm.
getting to that time of brain switching off. And the prints themselves are locked away and kept safe, the actual etchings.
Mhm.
But they bought a set of prints from them and then painted over them and displayed them in a gallery. And the critics were in arms. How could you deface? That's fake. Rah, bah, bah. And they were
Yeah,
like,
I think it's
"But
just they took the girl with the pearl earring and painted like a big red line across her eyes or something.
there's loads of stuff they did to provoke people. Um, I'm trying to think of a piece of art maybe. Oh, right. The actual print set was called The Horrors of War. Um, was it Goya? So Goya. Right, let's do this then. Reverse find this. Painted over Goya prints. Yes, I'm typing and talking out loud. Oh, the Chapman brothers. So they took a set of their prints and they literally painted over them with all monstrous faces.
Mhm.
And the critics were up in arms, and they let them bubble up and burn, and then they went, but these are just prints. you could technically make more.
Hmm.
So why are they so expensive to buy? And what's so wrong about defacing them? You could always just make more prints.
Yeah.
And the critics were like, and it was that sort of challenge. One of the things they did with one of their shows is they replicated the Third Reich banner, the red, white circle, but instead of a swastika, they put a smiley face in the
Yeah, I've
middle
seen
of
it.
the
Oh,
circle.
that's weird. I've just come across one, and it's one of the Third Reich guards bumming another one.
Yeah, they did all sorts. They took the actual again. They took Goya's horrors of war and turned them into miniature toys with the
Mhm.
idea of you play with toy soldiers all the time. Here's the horrors of war, and these are horror. There's like a tree that's just got people nailed to it, but it's now a toy size, a miniature, and it's
Oh,
like
that's insane.
so they constantly challenge. But they put these Third Reich banners on, and yeah, they offended people who had survived through the war, and they were upset. But the idea was it was to stop people to get it to look because if you take the swastika out, even when you remove it, that red banner with the white circle immediately brings to mind the Nazis. They're just become a symbol. And if you like, that's a type of art. It's a symbol that stands for something horrible and evil and a dark time in all of our pasts. I mean, if you watch the History Channel at any point, it's never all we're not the good guys in war. We were the opposing force in the
Yeah.
war that won. So we paint ourselves, but we did horrible things too. We came up with new ways to kill people faster as much as the Germans did. Now, yes, they had horrible ideals, but war is war and people die. So again, like all of these symbols
Hmm.
don't just stand now for the Nazi Party. It is a time where humanity made the wrong choice.
Yeah. And it's especially potent today. Oh, it's funny we're
Mm.
talking about war today, February the 16th, 2022, because apparently there was some American intelligence saying that today was going to be the day that Russia invades Ukraine. Now it's only 20 to 6. It could still happen, but God, no, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, literally, this
Because
podcast will become super viral and super famous for completely the wrong reason.
yeah,
Because you were
it'll be
quoting that the war
it
started.
which whoa, watch what about like at 8 p.m. today they invade, and I'm just like, oh God, I can't put this up now, can I?
Yeah, it's amazing that like that's become a thing again.
Uh,
That's it's just it's like how do we make these mistakes? But even as well, like with the whole Trump thing
mm,
and how that bubbled up and the way that was based on people's hatred of one another, just
yeah,
making something so powerful so quickly. It's like
mm,
how did that happen? Like how did we
yeah,
get to this?
and it's weird because you look at both sides and like you don't look back at the Germans now and blame the German people for what happened because here he brainwashed 4 million people.
And he's terrified people because
Yeah.
if you didn't join with them, you were against them, and that
Hmm.
was a scary place to be. And it's exactly the same technique that's being used again
Yeah.
today. It is
It's
just like this is what everyone thinks. If you're not with us, you're against us.
mhm.
Where
And both
I
sides are just
actually
as bad
want.
as each other.
But the one thing I did see a post today that it was one of those things that's um why does the left struggle so much? Why is it the right can easily do it? And someone said that it was a numbers game. And I kind of was listening. I was like, I kind of see this as a point. And the thing about the ideals of the left is if someone does something wrong, then we stop them. We try to say, what you're doing right now, that's a bad thing.
Hmm.
And we'll do it to each other. I've said things to friends where I pulled them aside and said, that thing you're saying, not good. And people have done it to me. That thing you're doing, not good. And I'm gone,
Hmm.
right, okay, I need to change. The problem with the right is they say that when someone does something wrong, they band together and say no, and they deflect and they put the blame elsewhere.
Yeah.
So there's literally just more of them because the people on the left are constantly not sort of pulling each other apart for a bad reason. They're literally trying to be better people so much that we're more divided
Hmm.
with our ideals to one side that's just like let's get everyone to hate one thing like and again our government we're at that point where you know we were told we should do Brexit because immigrants are ruining the country.
We'll have 350 million a week to put into the NHS, except we're going to sell it.
Yeah, but this is the thing. All of that wasn't true. You know, we've still got the exact same issues. Things are actually worse. We struggled with a lot more. Well, now they've turned around and they're blaming woke people.
I know.
It's all these woke people, and it's like, wasn't it immigrants? Does that mean we can have the immigrants back? No. Brexit's still a thing, and we're still left, but now it's a bunch of other people.
I've seen it described as like, well, with political spectrum, is that it's a circle. Is that you can go so far left, you end up becoming right, and you become so far right, you end up becoming left. And it's weird. It's weird. That's all I can really say about it. But yeah, in terms of art and everything, you know, some of the art coming out these days, you know, I heard someone say art was supposed to be like a mirror to the real world, and especially, you know, from my studies and stuff, you know, people who try to, like, I never understood the whole censoring of art. I think that art should never be censored, because I think the day you start censoring art is the day that art dies and all that. And this has been a really interesting, we've gone way over time than I wanted to.
I did look at the time and thought, ooh, you're going to have fun editing this.
It's been such an interesting conversation, to the point of I might just leave it. There you go. You've got an extra long episode of talking shite, and that's effectively what we do. We just talk shite on this podcast and all that.
It's been a good talking a lot of shite. I've enjoyed myself, and
I hope that people listening have enjoyed as well. If you have enjoyed this episode, guys, do let us know. You can rate us on Spotify now, which is great. And if you want to, you know, see what else we're doing in life, whereabouts can we find you online, Ian?
Oh, you can find me everywhere, but the best thing to do is look for Ian A. Blakeman Illustrations in Google, and you'll find Twitter and Facebook, and then whichever social media you can find me on. And if I'm terrible at remembering my own thing. There's a place called Beacon, what has all the websites, and if you look for Ian_A_Blakeman on Beacons, you should find me.
Yeah.
And that will literally take you to everywhere I am.
Yeah. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify, I'll put the links in the description, so you guys can find that. But Ian, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been one hell of a conversation.
It's been good fun. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
We've covered so much that I didn't even expect to cover. But yeah, thanks a lot, Ian, and hopefully we might come get you back on in the future to talk about something else, or if not,
definitely be up for it. Definitely be up for it.
But yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, and to you guys, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed talking shite.